Hello all and welcome back to my Hubble abode. Today we're going to be talking about the best planetesimal, asterisk there, in existence, and that is Pluto. Today we're going to be talking about the awesome features on Pluto whilst also knitting some Pluto themed socks, just like all the other planet videos, with the exception of Neptune, which I did way before I actually started this series. But anyway, today I'm not using opal yarn, I'm going to be using the West Yorkshire Spinners yarn. I can't remember which one it is, but it's red and grey. I think you'd be able to figure it out. I'll link it down in the description if you want to buy it. So in case you don't know, Pluto is a very cold dwarf planet that orbits right behind Neptune in the solar system. It used to be called a planet, but up until 2006, this was when the IAU decided to demote it to a dwarf planet because it hadn't cleared out its neighbourhood. And despite that, I think Pluto is arguably one of the most fascinating and, geologically diverse planetesimals, which is planets and dwarf planets and all other things in the solar system, and that's why I really want to be talking about it today. So the first thing I want to talk about is the fact that Pluto has a really cool heart on its surface, and that's called the Tombow or Tombow Regio. Tombow Regio is a heart-shaped feature that is roughly the size of Mexico if you just do a basic sort of circle area formula like I did with the diameter. And you might think Mexico is quite a small country for us, but in actuality this thing takes up about 20% of Pluto's surface area, which is a staggering amount. The heart can be split up into two sides or lobes if you want to continue with the biological analogy, with the left side being very smooth and called Sputnik planitia. And New Horizons images as early as 2015 showed us that it's actually covered with a very smooth sort of layer of fine nitrogen, almost like a snow, if you will. And dotted within it are actually very small water ice mountains, a little bit smaller than Mount Everest, but still ginormous nonetheless. What's interesting is that we don't quite know how Sputnik planitia became so smooth, although we do have a few ideas. One of them is that it was an impact crater, quite a young one as well, and so after the impact it would have been smoothed over with all the nitrogen. But to this day we're still not quite sure why this planitia came to be and why it's so smooth. At the bottom left corner of one of my favourite images is a very dark sort of little area, which is the end of a feature called Cthulhu Macula, and yes, I love all of these names. What's interesting if you zoom into this really dark area is that there's a slightly lighter substance that's kind of spilling into the planitia, and what we think that is glaciers, so ice flows, which is amazing because I thought only Earth had glaciers, so that's pretty fascinating. Actually, scientists think that these glaciers and this glacial activity might be active even today. So coming back to Sputnik planitia itself, you might be able to see that this nitrogen layer is actually sort of split up. You can't see it very well in the center, but you can definitely see it on the outskirts as the borders have sort of been etched out, if you will, by some really dark liquid, which might be tholins or it might be the glaciers. I actually don't know. But what these are, a lot of scientists believe, is convection cells that indicate that Pluto is essentially very geologically active right now. And there's actually quite a couple papers that suggest that it might be something called cryovolcanic resurfacing. I've just talked about ice flows and glaciers, but believe it or not, there's actually evidence that there might even be water flowing. Despite the average surface temperature being around 40 Kelvin, so I think that's around minus 233 degrees Celsius. Yeah, I think so. I'm trying to do mental maths in my head, but I think it is, which is absolutely freezing. But there is actually evidence that there might be flowing liquid water within Pluto, and yes, I mean inside Pluto, under the crust. Quite a few papers suggest this idea with good evidence, but one in particular, Bulgaria et al., suggests very similar to how Jupiter's moon, may have some sort of subsurface ocean thing going on. Uranus's moons and even Pluto itself might have this going on. Although in the case with Pluto, what they believe is that this subsurface ocean is being caused by radiogenic heating. This is where radioactive elements that are within the core, essentially because they're radioactive, they're giving off energy, they're heating up all of the water ice that's within the not within the core, but within the mantle very close to the core, heating it up and hence melting it. So this sort of water, yeah, it's called water, this water, unfrozen in its liquid state, must be very close to the core because the surface temperature of Pluto is quite cold. So what we suspect is happening is we've got something like a silicate core with essentially like a bunch of radioactive sort of elements dotted here and there. And then on top of that, we've got this water subsurface ocean going on. And then on top of that, because this is quite close to the surface, some of this water ice wouldn't have melted, and so we'd have an icy mantle layer and then the crust. Another really cool thing about Pluto is that it is one of the best, no, it is the best example of a binary system that we have within the solar system. Now, I've already gone through this with one of my previous videos about binary systems because I just could not shut up about Pluto and Charon. But binary stars are more common than you think. We expect about 30% of stars within the Milky Way are part of a binary or tertiary system. But with planets, because we can't really see exoplanets all that well, it's not easy to tell, but from what we know about the solar system, they're much, much rarer. We have 4 candidate binary planets, but the problem is they cannot be classified as binary planets because they're all dwarf planets. Pluto and Charon are the best examples of a binary planet that we have in the solar system. And that is because the mass ratio of Charon to Pluto is about 0.12 to 1, meaning that Charon is roughly about 12% of the mass of Pluto, which is actually very high. If you compare that to Earth and the Moon, that ratio is 10 times smaller, and yet for some reason some scientists have the audacity to call the Earth and Moon a binary system. So I'm coming to the end of my sock, the final sock in the entire series with the exception of Neptune, which I haven't done yet, so I'm really sorry about that. But I'm about to tie everything up, and let's just talk about Pluto's surface for a second again. So as mentioned before with Sputnik Planitia, we have a load of features such as, I'm going to start forgetting them now, nitrogen plains, water ice mountains, glaciers, glacial activity of course, and hence tectonic activity and convection cells. But there's also so many other things that I just can't get into, otherwise this video would be 10 days long. Things like methane dunes, we've got things like uplands, canyons, we have extension faults and darkening from tholins. Those are hydrocarbons that have mixed with the cosmic rays, not cosmic rays, solar rays, and hence they've been darkened up a little bit, that coat a little bit of the planet. Things like Cthulhu Macula are a great example of these, and you can also see these in asteroids. I mean, the list just goes on and on. So what I'm going to do is, whilst I'm sewing up the end of this sock, I'm going to show you some really, really cool pictures that we took from New Horizons, and you can just sit back and enjoy them. So my camera cut off with 5 seconds to spare, but that's great. I've just finished sewing up the ends, so I've woven in some ends to make sure it doesn't fly away and like unravel, which would be terrible. But here we are with the second Pluto sock finally completed. There we go, just turn it inside out. And there we go, one more sock finally added to the pile. I haven't done any Neptune socks because I didn't do a Neptune video because I had already done one, but I didn't realise I was going to do a nice sock series, so that sucks. But anyway, I will complete those in my own time and post some pictures on the community tabs for you guys to admire my socks if you will want to. But yeah, here we are with 2 socks finally completed. and we can start another video series. Let me know what you want with that, because I don't know, I've got loads of ideas, but I don't know what to do. Thank you for joining me. I hope you learned something about planets and maybe made you like them even more, hopefully. But yeah, let me know what you think, and I'll see you guys very soon with a crochet tutorial. Bye. Put it on top of my other socks, so here you go. Here's the final product. Hope you like them, and I'll see you soon.